The text message from my mom came at 10:47 p.m. on the last day of school. Great news! Your aunt and uncle need help this summer. You'll watch the kids. It'll be fun. We already said yes to you. No question mark. No asking if I wanted to. Just a done deal, handed to me like a chore I didn't get to refuse. I stared at my phone screen until the words blurred. 7 kids. My Aunt Pamela and Uncle Scott had 7 kids ranging from 2 years old to 13, and apparently, I was now their free summer camp counselor. I'm Kelsey, I'm 16, and I had exactly one plan for that summer: work at the community pool, save money for a car, and maybe have an actual teenage summer for once. Instead, my parents decided I would spend 3 months as an unpaid nanny while my aunt and uncle went to work every day and lived their lives like they didn't have responsibilities. The next morning, my mom walked into my room without knocking and found me still in bed, staring at the ceiling. "Why aren't you up?" she asked, already annoyed. "You need to be at Pamela's by 8. They're counting on you." I sat up slowly, my stomach tight. "Mom, I got a job at the pool. I start next week." "I can't just," she cut me off with a wave of her hand. "You can work next summer. Family comes first. Pamela's been so stressed and Scott's working double shifts. They need you." I tried again. "What about my plans? What about what I need?" Her eyes went cold. "Kelsey, you're 16. You don't pay rent. You don't buy groceries. The least you can do is help your family when they ask." I felt heat rising in my chest. "They didn't ask. You volunteered me without even telling me first." She stepped closer, her voice dropping into that scary calm tone she used when she was done arguing. "You will go to your aunt's house tomorrow morning. You will help with those kids. And you will not embarrass me by acting like a selfish brat. Do you understand?" I didn't answer. I just stared at her until she turned and walked out, slamming my door behind her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the whole summer vanishing, about my friends going to the pool without me, about the money I wouldn't make, about being trapped in a house with 7 kids who weren't even mine to take care of. But something else was building underneath the frustration. A cold, clear thought. If they were going to treat me like I didn't matter, then I was going to show them exactly what happens when you ignore someone who's paying attention. I grabbed my phone and opened a note. At the top, I typed, "Evidence log, summer 2024. Then I set an alarm for 7:30 a.m. and closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I'd start documenting everything. And by the end of summer, my parents and my aunt and uncle were going to regret every single decision that led to this moment. If you've ever volunteered for something you didn't agree to, if you've ever been told your plans don't matter because someone else's needs are more important, stay until the end. Because what I did that summer didn't just teach my family a lesson. It changed the way they saw me forever. Day 1 started exactly as badly as I expected. My mom dropped me off at Aunt Pamela's house at 7:55 a.m. and didn't even turn off the car. "Have a good day," she said in that fake cheerful voice, like I was heading to summer camp instead of unpaid labor. I stood on the sidewalk and watched her drive away, my backpack heavy on my shoulders with nothing but a water bottle, my phone, and a notebook I'd grabbed at the last minute. The front door swung open before I even knocked. Aunt Pamela stood there in business clothes, lipstick on, purse already over her shoulder. "Oh good, you're here," she said, stepping aside so I could come in. The house smelled like burnt toast and baby wipes. From somewhere upstairs, I heard crying. From the living room, cartoons blared at full volume. "Okay, so," Pamela said, talking fast while she checked her phone. "Breakfast is kind of a free-for-all. There's cereal, frozen waffles, whatever. The little ones need help. Diapers are in the bathroom. Bella's in charge of the older kids, but she's 13, so you know, she's not exactly responsible." She said it like it was a joke, but I didn't laugh. Bella was one of the 7 kids I was apparently babysitting, which meant I wasn't even getting help from a teenager. I was the help. "Lunch is in the fridge," Pamela continued, barely looking at me. "Leftovers, sandwich stuff, mac and cheese. Snacks are in the pantry. Don't let them eat too much sugar or they'll go crazy. Nap time for the babies is around 1. Oh, and if anyone gets hurt, there's a first aid kit under the sink." She finally looked up from her phone. Any questions? I had about 100 questions, starting with why am I doing this, and ending with what am I supposed to do if something actually goes wrong. But instead, I just shook my head. Good. She grabbed her keys off the hook. I'll be back around 6. Scott's working late, so it'll just be me. You're a lifesaver, Kelsey. Seriously. And then she was gone. The door closed behind her, and I stood alone in the entryway of a house that was not mine, responsible for 7 children I had not agreed to watch. From the living room, a voice shouted, "Who are you?" I walked in and found all 7 of them. Bella, 13, sprawled on the couch with her phone. The twins, Aiden and Zoe, who were 10, fighting over the remote. Liam, 8, building something with Legos on the floor. Mia, 5, sitting way too close to the TV. And the babies, 2-year-old Noah in a high chair covered in what I hoped was yogurt, and 4-year-old Chloe standing on the coffee table in nothing but a diaper. I'm Kelsey, I said. I'm watching you guys this summer. Bella didn't even look up. Cool. Can you make me a waffle? Aiden threw a couch pillow at Zoe. I had the remote first. Chloe jumped off the coffee table and landed hard on her knees. She didn't cry, just laughed and climbed back up. Noah started banging his plastic spoon on the high chair tray, chanting, "Juice. Juice. Juice." I took a slow breath and pulled out my phone. I opened the camera, held it low, and took a wide shot of the chaos. Then I opened my notes app and typed, Day 1, 8:12 a.m. Left alone with 7 kids. No instructions beyond, figure it out. Babies unsupervised. 13-year-old on the phone, not helping. I slipped my phone back in my pocket and walked into the kitchen to find those frozen waffles. The first week was a blur of diapers, tantrums, spilled juice, and constant noise. I woke up every morning at 7 a.m. My mom drove me to Pamela's house, and I didn't leave until after 6 p.m. when Pamela finally came home, looking exhausted and barely thanking me. My dad asked once how it was going. Fine, I lied, because I knew if I complained, he'd just repeat what my mom said about family helping family. But it wasn't fine. Mia had meltdowns every single day over things like the wrong color cup or her sandwich being cut wrong. The twins fought constantly over everything: toys, TV shows, who got to sit in the front seat of the imaginary car they built out of couch cushions. Liam was sweet but needed help with everything, from finding his shoes to opening snack bags. And the babies? Noah was still in diapers and Chloe was supposedly potty training, which meant I spent half my day cleaning up accidents. Bella, the 13-year-old, was useless. She stayed in her room most of the day, came down for meals, and then disappeared again. When I asked her to help, she'd roll her eyes. I'm not the babysitter. You are. By day 4, I'd started keeping a detailed log. I wrote down every time I changed a diaper, every meal I made, every fight I broke up, every time one of the kids got hurt and I had to handle it alone. I took photos of the mess, toys everywhere, dishes piled in the sink, juice stains on the carpet. I recorded videos of the chaos when things got really bad, like when Chloe and Noah both had meltdowns at the same time and I was the only adult in the house. At night, when I finally got home, I was too exhausted to do anything. My friends were posting pictures from the pool, talking about their jobs, making plans I wasn't part of. One night, my best friend Haley texted me, "Where have you been? We miss you." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Babysitting. All summer." She sent back a sad face emoji. I didn't tell her it wasn't my choice. I didn't tell her I was being used. I just put my phone down and stared at the ceiling, that cold anger growing sharper. By the end of week 1, I'd made a decision. If I was going to be stuck here all summer, I wasn't going to suffer in silence. I was going to document everything. And when the time was right, I was going to make sure every single adult who thought this was okay would see exactly what they'd done. Week 2 started with a phone call I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd arrived early, my mom had a meeting and dropped me off at 7:30 instead of 8, and I walked in to find Aunt Pamela still in the kitchen, talking on the phone. She didn't see me come in. I know, she was saying, her voice low and tired. But what was I supposed to do? Daycare for all of them would cost more than I make. At least this way it's free. My stomach dropped. Free. That's what I was to them. Not family helping family. Not a favor. Free labor. I backed up quietly and pretended to just be arriving, shutting the door loud enough that she'd hear. When I walked into the kitchen, she'd already hung up and was smiling that fake smile again. Morning, Kelsey. Thanks again for doing this. You're such a huge help. I didn't smile back. I just nodded and walked past her to where the kids were already starting their morning chaos. That day, things got worse. Mia had a full meltdown because I gave her the wrong flavor of yogurt. She screamed for 20 minutes straight, throwing herself on the floor, kicking the cabinets. I tried everything, calm voice, distraction, ignoring her like some parenting website said to do, but nothing worked. Finally, she wore herself out and fell asleep on the living room floor at 10 a.m. I took a photo of her there, red-faced and exhausted, and added it to my evidence folder. Then Noah, who'd been quiet in his playpen, somehow climbed out and made it to the stairs before I caught him. My heart almost stopped. I scooped him up right as he reached the third step, and he just laughed like it was a game. I sat on the floor with him in my lap, hands shaking, and typed into my notes, 10:47 a.m. The 2-year-old almost fell down the stairs. No safety gates installed. I'm watching 7 kids alone in a house that isn't child-proofed. What happens if someone actually gets hurt? Lunch was a disaster. I made mac and cheese for everyone, but Aiden said it was disgusting and dumped his entire bowl into the sink. Zoe cried because Aiden got more than her, even though they'd had the exact same amount. Liam spilled his juice all over the table. Chloe refused to eat anything and just threw noodles at Noah, who thought it was hilarious. By the time I got everyone cleaned up, it was 1:30 and I still hadn't eaten. I sat on the kitchen floor with a granola bar I'd brought from home and felt tears burning in my eyes. I didn't let myself cry. Instead, I pulled out my phone and recorded a video. It's day 9, I said quietly, my voice shaking. I've been here every day for 9 days. I haven't been paid. I haven't been asked if I'm okay. I'm 16 years old and I'm taking care of 7 kids by myself for 10 hours a day. If something happens to one of these kids, who's responsible? Because I'm starting to think it's me, and that's not fair. I saved the video and locked my phone. That night, my mom asked how my day was. Fine, I said again. She didn't notice I hadn't touched my dinner. She didn't notice the dark circles under my eyes. She just nodded and went back to her phone. My dad was in the living room watching TV. Neither of them asked if I needed a break. Neither of them seemed to care that I'd lost my entire summer. I went in my room, opened my laptop, and started researching. I typed in, can parents force you to babysit? Is unpaid babysitting legal? What counts as child neglect? The search results were eye-opening. I found forums where people talked about family exploitation, about being used as free childcare, about how some states had laws about leaving kids with someone who wasn't trained or prepared. I found articles about parents being charged with neglect for leaving young children without proper supervision. And then I found something that made my heart beat faster. A local news story from 2 years ago about a family that had been investigated by Child Protective Services after neighbors reported that young children were being left in unsafe conditions. The parents had claimed they had a babysitter, but the babysitter was a teenager who wasn't equipped to handle that many kids. CPS had stepped in. The parents had been fined. The kids had been temporarily removed. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I opened a new document and started writing. At the top, I put, formal complaint, documentation of unsafe childcare situation. I didn't know if I'd actually use it, but I was going to be ready. By week 3, I'd become a machine. I documented everything with the precision of someone building a legal case. Every diaper change, every meal, every near-miss accident, every moment I was left alone with kids who needed more supervision than one teenager could possibly provide. I took photos, videos, and voice memos. I wrote down timestamps. I noted every time Aunt Pamela came home late without calling, every time Uncle Scott didn't come home at all because he was working overnight shifts. But I also started testing boundaries. One morning, I texted Aunt Pamela at 9 a.m. Chloe has a fever. What should I do? She didn't respond for 3 hours. When she finally did, all she said was, give her Tylenol. It's in the medicine cabinet. No, are you okay? No, do you need me to come home? Just instructions, like I was a nurse she'd hired. I took a screenshot of the conversation and added it to my folder. Another day, I let the house get messy. I didn't clean up the toys, didn't do the dishes, didn't vacuum the Cheerios that were ground into the carpet. When Pamela came home, she looked around and sighed. It's a mess in here. I just stared at her. Yeah, 7 kids make a lot of mess. She frowned like she wanted to say something, but then just walked away to her room. That night, I added a note, expected to babysit and clean the house. No compensation. No appreciation. My breaking point came on a Wednesday in late June. It was hot, over 90 degrees, and the AC in Aunt Pamela's house barely worked. The kids were cranky and bored. Aiden and Zoe got into a huge fight that ended with Aiden pushing Zoe into the coffee table. She hit her head not hard, but hard enough that she cried for 10 minutes, and I had to hold ice on the bump while she screamed that she hated her brother. I was still dealing with that when Noah took off his diaper and peed all over the couch. Mia saw it and started crying because the couch is ruined. Chloe thought it was funny and tried to take her diaper off too. Liam came running in from outside covered in mud because he'd been digging in the backyard and no one had been watching him. And Bella? She walked through all of it, got a soda from the fridge, and went back upstairs without saying a single word. I stood in the middle of that chaos, surrounded by crying, mess, and the suffocating heat, and something inside me snapped. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and called my mom. She answered on the 3rd ring. Kelsey? What's wrong? I need you to come get me, I said, my voice tight. Right now. What? Why? What happened? I can't do this anymore. I'm serious. You need to come get me right now or I'm walking home. There was a pause. Then her voice went cold. Kelsey Marie, you are not leaving those kids alone. You made a commitment. I didn't make anything, I shot back. You made it for me. I never agreed to this. We'll talk about this tonight. You're staying until your aunt gets home. Mom, she hung up on me. I stood there with the phone in my hand, shaking with rage. Zoe was still crying. Noah was still half naked. The house was falling apart and no one cared. No one was coming to help me. I looked around at the disaster and made my decision. I wasn't waiting until the end of summer. I was done. That night, after Aunt Pamela finally came home and my mom picked me up, I didn't say a word on the drive. When we got home, I went straight to my room and locked the door. I pulled up the website for Child Protective Services and stared at the Report Suspected Abuse or Neglect button. My hands hovered over the keyboard. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to report my own family? I thought about Zoe's head hitting the table. I thought about Noah almost falling down the stairs. I thought about being screamed at by a 2-year-old while no one else cared enough to even check if I was okay. And then I thought about that phone call I'd overheard. At least this way it's free. I clicked the button. The form asked for details. I provided them. Names, ages, addresses. Description of the situation. 7 children between the ages of 2 and 13 are being left in the care of a single 16-year-old babysitter for 10+ hours a day, 5 days a week. The home is not properly child-proofed. There have been multiple near-miss accidents. The babysitter is not trained, not compensated, and not equipped to handle this level of responsibility. Parents are unreachable during the day and have not provided emergency plans or proper safety measures. I attached photos, videos, my evidence log. At the bottom, there was a box that asked if I wanted to remain anonymous. I checked no. I typed my name, my phone number, my email. Let them know it was me. Let them know I wasn't hiding. I hit submit at 11:43 p.m. on June 26th. Then I closed my laptop, got into bed, and slept better than I had in 3 weeks. 3 days passed before anything happened. I went back to Aunt Pamela's house on Thursday, Friday, and Monday, acting completely normal. I didn't tell anyone what I'd done. I just kept documenting, kept watching the kids, and kept waiting. Then on Tuesday morning, my mom got a phone call while we were eating breakfast. She looked at the screen, frowned, and answered. Hello. Her face went pale. What? When? She stood up from the table, pacing. No, that's This must be some kind of mistake. Who? She stopped talking and just listened. I watched her hands start to shake. We'll be there. Yes. I understand. She hung up and turned to look at me. Get in the car. Now. Why? I asked, even though I knew. Now, Kelsey. We drove in silence. When we pulled up to Aunt Pamela's house, there was a white sedan parked in the driveway with government plates. My mom's hands gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles went white. Did you do this? She whispered. I didn't answer. I just got out of the car. Inside, Aunt Pamela was sitting on the couch, crying. Uncle Scott was standing behind her, looking like he might be sick. And at the kitchen table sat a woman in professional clothes with a clipboard and a briefcase. She looked up when we came in. You must be Kelsey, she said. Her voice was calm but firm. I'm Angela Rodriguez from Child Protective Services. I'd like to ask you some questions. Aunt Pamela's head snapped up. She's the one who called you, she hissed. She made all this up. Mrs. Hayes, Angela said quietly. I've already spoken with your children. I've observed the home. And I've reviewed extensive documentation that was submitted with the initial report. I'm not here because of a misunderstanding. My mom looked at me, her face a mixture of shock and fury. What did you do? I told the truth, I said. My voice didn't shake. Angela gestured for me to sit. I did. For the next hour, she asked me questions, and I answered every single one. How long had I been watching the kids? Every day for 3 weeks. How many hours a day? 10 to 11 hours. Was I trained in CPR or first aid? No. Had I been compensated? No. Had there been any accidents or near accidents? Yes, and I described each one in detail. Had I asked for help? Yes, multiple times, and I'd been ignored or dismissed. When I finished, Angela turned to my mom and Aunt Pamela. Leaving 7 children, including 2 toddlers, in the sole care of an untrained 16-year-old for extended periods is not appropriate supervision. This home is not adequately child-proofed. There have been multiple safety incidents, and the caregiver herself expressed concerns that were not addressed. She's family, my mom said weakly. She's a child, Angela replied. And she should not have been placed in this position. Aunt Pamela stood up, her voice shaking. So what, you're going to take my kids away because I couldn't afford daycare? No, Angela said. But we are going to require immediate changes. You'll need to arrange proper childcare or supervision. I'll be conducting follow-up visits. And there will be a formal investigation into whether this arrangement constituted neglect. The word neglect landed like a bomb in the silent room. Uncle Scott finally spoke, his voice hoarse. This is insane. She was just helping out. She was being exploited, Angela corrected. And she did the right thing by reporting it. She stood, gathered her things, and looked at me. Kelsey, if you ever feel unsafe or pressured into a situation like this again, you call us. Do you understand? I nodded. She left, and the room erupted. Aunt Pamela turned on me, her face red and furious. You ruined everything. Do you know what this means? They could take my kids. I could lose my job if this gets out. You selfish, horrible Pamela. Stop, my mom said, but her voice was weak. Aunt Pamela didn't stop. She's 16. She should be grateful she has a family that needs her. Instead, she calls CPS like we're monsters. You left me alone with 7 kids, I said quietly. Everyone stopped. You left me alone with 7 kids for 10 hours a day. You didn't ask if I wanted to. You didn't pay me. You didn't train me. You didn't even thank me. And when I told you I couldn't handle it, you ignored me. My voice got louder. One of your kids almost fell down the stairs. Another one hit her head. I was changing diapers, making meals, breaking up fights, and keeping toddlers alive while you were at work pretending everything was fine. You used me. And when I reported it, you called me selfish. The silence that followed was suffocating. Aunt Pamela opened her mouth, then closed it. Uncle Scott looked at the floor. My mom just stared at me like she didn't recognize me. I want to go home, I said. My mom drove me home without speaking. When we got there, she finally turned to me. You've made things very complicated for this family. No, I said. You did. When you volunteered me without asking. When you told me my summer didn't matter. When you let them use me because it was easier than saying no. You could have just talked to us, she said, her voice breaking. I tried, I whispered. You hung up on me. She didn't have an answer for that. That night, my dad came into my room. He sat on the edge of my bed and was quiet for a long time. Then he said, your mom's upset. Your aunt's furious. This is going to be awkward at family gatherings for a while. I know, I said. But you did the right thing, he added. I looked up surprised. He met my eyes. You shouldn't have been put in that position. And I'm sorry we didn't listen when you tried to tell us. It wasn't a full apology. It wasn't going to fix everything. But it was something. The CPS investigation took 2 months. In the end, Aunt Pamela and Uncle Scott weren't charged with anything criminal, but they were required to attend parenting classes and arrange proper childcare. They hired a nanny, an actual adult with training and references. They stopped speaking to me entirely. My mom barely spoke to me for weeks. When she finally did, it was to tell me I'd embarrassed the family and made everything harder for everyone. I didn't argue. I just said I protected those kids. And I protected myself. If that embarrasses you, that's your problem, not mine. By the end of July, I got my job at the pool. I spent the rest of the summer with my friends, made money, and started saving for that car. My phone stayed quiet, no more texts from Aunt Pamela, no more guilt trips from my mom. In August, Angela called me. I wanted to check in, she said. How are you doing? I'm okay, I said. And I meant it. Good. You should know that the family is complying with our requirements. The children are safe. You did a hard thing, Kelsey. Not many people your age would have had the courage. After we hung up, I sat on my bed and looked at the evidence folder on my phone. Hundreds of photos, dozens of videos, pages of notes. I didn't delete them. I'd keep them forever, just in case. Not as revenge. As proof. Proof that I'd heard. Proof that I'd mattered. Proof that sometimes the right thing to do is the hardest thing to do. My parents thought I'd just go along with their plan, that I'd spend the summer being used and say nothing. But I'd learned something important that summer. You don't owe anyone your silence. Not even family. Especially not family. If you've ever been told to just deal with something unfair, to just keep quiet because it's easier for everyone else, I hope my story shows you that you don't have to. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to be protected. And you deserve to stand up for yourself, even when the people who should be protecting you won't. That summer, I didn't just survive. I fought back. And I won. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about standing up for yourself when no one else will. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever been put in a situation where you had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting yourself? I read every single one. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.